Yeah, my name is Segomotso Kelefetswe, and I'm the CEO of Outlook Foundation, an organization that inspires young people, that helps the young people with career decisions, also with motivation, and then also coaching and mentoring. As well, I'm a civil engineer by profession, working for TCTA, and it's a state-owned entity that implements bulk raw water project for the Department of Water and Sanitation. Civil engineering is actually what you see around you. Somebody called it service delivery engineering because it's all about the provision of water, provision of roads, provision of infrastructure. Open the tap of water, you don't want to see any other color but clear water. So our work starts from when we get the water, most of the time from the river itself. You've seen the colors of the water in the river, so we get the water through the bigger pipes and abstraction facilities, and then we put it into a treatment facility. So we treat the water, take the dirty out, and then make the water to be in a drinkable state. Then our work still continues by having conveyance systems that takes the water from there to where users need to get them. So the users could be you as an individual, could be industries, could be office work, different areas, recreational parks. If you've seen this economic side of the roads, we call it traffic or transport engineering, which deals with aspects of making sure that you're commuting from one city to the other is simple and is very effective. How do we do that? We understand that as a traveler, you will find yourself needing to have, let's say, comfort brake, your car need fuel. So they have done the system of doing the roads not to go through towns. Now they are bypassing, that's the national roads, with which when you need water, you stop on the road, you leave your car at the fuel station, they fuel it, you get to the restrooms, and then you buy refreshments, then you get back on the road. So the time that you need to travel has shortened, unlike olden times where you had to get into towns and then you have to look for parking. So it took a lot of time. So that's why I say this is more related to service delivery. It makes you to feel like you are a VIP as a user, because services that are done for you are there for your convenience and are there to make your life to be a little bit easier. I grew up in Mafikeng. Mafikeng is known as a former homeland of Bophuthatswana. People could understand that in the oldest time there was South Africa and there were homelands. So we were in South Africa but out of South Africa. So we had a system that was called Department of Education and Training type of system. Within that system, when compared to what others were studying within South Africa, it was taken as the lowest quality of education. Because when we finished school, we went to university and we had to start by bridging course to try to upgrade the quality of school education to other schools so that we're able to fit within the university system. So the area that we grew in was very, very rural. In essence, most of us as the kids, we used to walk, minimum of 3 to about 10 kilometers on foot to and from school. My mother was a single mother, and my father passed away in 1993 when I was still very, very young. And what happens is that, she was also retrenched from school. So the challenges I had was to depend on what she could get. She was a dressmaker. So she will fix clothes for people, and as she fixed clothes for people, then she will use that money to take us to school. And the essence of traveling longer distance used to be difficult because when it's raining, it was difficult. We had to cross the river. When it's raining, we have to go a longer route because you have to go to the bridge and then try to, take a longer route to school. So it was quite a challenge to be in those rural areas where you have to find yourself traversing such a long distance to school. And also we didn't have nutritional program like nowadays they're having. So once you don't have any food or anything that you are given to sustain yourself with, you will have to stay the whole day like that. And the other one that was very difficult was at school. At school, our teachers, most of them were not as best as the teachers that we have nowadays. I remember when we did matric, we did 3 chapters of physics. So there were still a lot of chapters and we still have to write. The chemistry part, fortunately the teacher was good. She finished and we managed to revise. So the physics, we did only 3 chapters, and I was fortunate to attend Saturday school program, ProTech, whereby they were teaching us or tutoring us more on maths and physics. So the physics that I couldn't bridge at school, I got it from ProTech. Lack of resources, actually, that's what made me to want to do services for people, not to go through what you've gone through. The essence of you having to take a long route when there's a short route, you have to bridge the gap. So that's why I thought of provision of infrastructure. And then secondly, like you say, when we're thinking about the issues where, by the way, we used to fetch the water from the borehole, or if not, there was that extent, especially when we visit our grandmother, where we go to the river to get water. So that itself made me to feel like, to make people also to feel human, you have to be a participator in terms of provision of services to and infrastructure to people. And if you could see, like in terms of the big companies, they sometimes do donate money to build bridges for communities where kids are subjected to crossing the rivers. When I see that, it reminds me of my time when I was young. And I think that's what made me to feel like, as best as I can, I should contribute in terms of infrastructural development.
So my name is Adolf Mabasa. I work now for the Department of Public Works and Infrastructure. I serve as a mechanical engineer under the Facilities Management Unit. And I was under the Department of Public Works bursary program, and Outlook Foundation was brought in to assist us with school and coping and mentorship and all of that. And throughout the program, Mr. Segomotso was the person who was there for the most part. There's a lot of people in Outlook Foundation, but for UP, I think we had the opportunity to deal with the main guy. Going on throughout matric, I decided that I want to do physics. And there aren't many funding opportunities for physics, but then there's a lot for engineering. So what happened was I decided, I was like, what is the engineering that I think has a lot of physics in it? And then I did small research, asked my sister here and then they're like, okay, I think given the fact that you're more physics, less chemistry, so let's try mechanical engineering. So I applied for mechanical engineering. It's a good experience being a mentor, coming from a space of being a mentee and being able to touch other people as he did and through his teachings and everything that I learned from him.
So people that became your inspiration was teachers, because I wanted to be a teacher, seeing them teaching maths and science, and I thought, let me go and teach youngsters maths and science. But I think as I got to university, there's a guy who we relate to, we only knew after that we relate to, he studied civil engineering. And I think he's the one who pulled me to civil engineering, that offense and tutor. He just showed me how beautiful engineering could be, and I followed on the footsteps. And I do believe, like you say, that sometimes when you see somebody doing something good, you also want to find yourself participating in that. So he definitely shaped my thoughts, and he definitely was instrumental to me making a decision on the civil engineering. You can see that the choices that we made, we were influenced when we were at the university, but what about kids being influenced at a younger age? And I think that's what made us to start the foundations and the programs that we have to say, let's help the kids, especially from the places that we come from, where we know there's no information, so that they can make decisions earlier. They don't waste time like us, because if I knew about civil, I would have learned a lot about it, and I would have excelled even better at university, because I would have entered my passion with preparedness. But I entered my passion halfway, when I was already in the system. So I developed passion as I continued. Unfortunately, it was a good choice. Typically, if you find yourself in a design office, your role will be to come in the office, you plan the work of what you need to do, the design aspect that you're involved in. And most of the design, you don't do them alone, you do with teams or even other disciplines. Let's say you're doing a pump station where there's going to be mechanical equipment, you are doing the civil component of it. So you meet with the design team to discuss how you're going to do your aspect and how they're going to do the aspect and how those are going to meet together. So it involves having meetings to decide on what needs to be done. Then after that, you go into your own space to go and design aspects that you want to do. And depending on where you are, if you're a senior, you're going to have junior designers assigned to you. So you break further the components of what you're dealing with to say, let's say in the pump station, I need somebody who's going to work on the concrete works. I need somebody who's going to work with the excavations. I need somebody who's going to work with the drawings. So you facilitate the task assignment for those different aspects. And when you do task assignment for different aspects, you oversee it to make sure that they deliver at a certain time, and then you review that design. And then when you get to the bigger meetings, which I talked about, where it's interfield, you have to be able to give feedback of what's happening. So you are responsible for the work, though other people are helping you. You are the ones who is going to come and report on how am I going to do the civil engineering aspect of the project? How far am I delayed, or what's happening? When the design is completed and is signed off, then it's taken to the contractor for construction. So if you find yourself in construction, your work typically will come to where you study the design, you check the drawings, and then you are going to plan your activities in such a way that you get resources, you get equipment, and then those are going to be used together to bring about implementation of the infrastructure. And I think your day there, it's quite difficult because you start with safety. You have to make sure that people are working in a safe environment. People are aware of the hazard around them that can harm them. So as soon as people are aware of what is can be hazard around them, then they plan their work in such a way that they avoid having injuries or having any other life-threatening situations around their construction area. So then you start with your activities where you excavate, and then you supervise to make sure that whoever is driving the equipment, they dig in the right place, they dig to the right level, and then whatever needs to be installed there is put at the right level. And then, you know, all the activities that are happening there are going to happen according to how the design is. Communication between engineers, like we say, it's more in terms of design, it's in terms of the drawings. Like we say, picture can speak 1,000 words. So the drawings itself will tell you how to do that work and how it's supposed to be when it's finished. So as a person in construction, you have to make sure that that itself is done as the design is. If there are challenges, which typically happens, you go to the designer and tell him that what you want me to do there, it cannot happen. Then the designer have to either tweak and change it and then give it to you, or designer can say, think about the solution that we can do, then we think about that, then they use that as a design solution. So the engineer is typically there in the morning to plan what work needs to be done when you are in the office, and then when you're in the field, it's how you're going to do that work that is in planned. And I think for my work, especially in terms of where I am, our work is at the project management level. So we get the designers designing, and then we make sure that the design is okay. As a client, we sign it off, we say we are happy with the design, it's going to fulfill our needs, and then we go to the contractor, and the contractor does the work. So the aspect of it has a lot of administration in it, because at work I have to show my superiors that, you know what, the work is done well, give them interim project progress, which is reporting, and then at times we get instruction through the emails where we have to be told what to do. And then the other one, when we interact with those contractors or consultant on what is happening on the construction areas. If there are issues, there might be investigation work. Let's say, for an example, there's environmental transgression or safety. You know, we have to facilitate to make sure that those issues that are being dealt with on site are going to be covered very well. And as we continue, civil engineering, like we say, has a lot of aspects. I spoke about water and roads. There's still other aspects. I might not be able to get to all of them, but let me talk about the two most important ones. One is geotechnical. It's dealing with the soil type. You need to understand the area you are building in. Some areas you cannot build in because of the soil classification. So as the geotechnical engineer, which is an aspect under civil engineering, we study the soils. So we can tell you that this soil type has what we call bearing capacity. It can manage to have one floor or many other floors on top of them. So we guide in terms of the type of build you can do. And the other one that I can talk about is material, because, you know, when we build, sometimes we are dictated by the environment, and we do what is called material engineering. Material engineering is about the material that we can use to build. If you are in the coastal areas, you know, you will be advised not to build more with your steel, because your steel is going to be subjected to moisture, and then you're going to have rusting, and then you are going to replace windows and doors almost every time. So when you get there, they can give you materials that are fit for purpose for those areas. We say, as soon as you want to see yourself as an engineer, when you've chosen to be an engineer, walk like an engineer, think like an engineer, research more about engineering, and make sure that whatever you do, it leads you to cementing and to strengthening the choice that you had. So this is the lesson that we give to the learners, to say, you know what, don't look at those from what people have been saying. Maths is difficult, because I think that's how they make choices. Maths is difficult, science is difficult. Typically, I say nothing beats hard work. If you've decided and you work very hard, anything is possible. So we showed the case to the learners also about the importance of doing this by using our lives to say, we are from rural areas. As we come from rural areas, don't worry about thinking about the subject being difficult. Worry about you being able to defeat it. Look at it as a challenge that you need to solve. When you've seen a bigger obstacle in your way and then you solve it, you become a better person. So we always want them to see themselves for what they are worth. Because if you don't show them their worth, then we are also disadvantaging them. So the lesson that I have for the learners is that choose what you want to be, follow it, and then make sure that nothing will disturb you from taking that route. Because it is possible for everybody to do anything, only if you put your mind to it.